Deep explanation on why there is only one God. Understanding God through essence. When we ask, what makes someone God, we are asking about the essence, the fundamental nature that defines God. Think of essence like the what it is of a thing. What makes a tree, a human, a human? For God, the essence includes being eternal, all-knowing, perfect, and all-powerful. Among all these characteristics, all-powerful is crucial for our argument because it tells us that God's power is complete and unlimited. Why there can only be one divine being. If God is truly all-powerful, then there cannot logically be two independent gods. Why? Suppose there were two gods, A and B. Each would claim to be all-powerful. But here's the problem. If A exists and B exists, and they are separate beings, then the power of A is in some way distinct from the power of B. That means each could not exercise absolute power independently without some constraint or limitation from the other. In other words, two all-powerful beings cannot coexist without contradicting the concept of being all-powerful. So logically, the divine essence, which includes being all-powerful, can only be a property of one actual divine being. Let's look at this analogy. Imagine a single, infinite flame of light. If you try to split that same flame into two separate flames, each claiming to be infinite, you immediately run into a contradiction. Neither can be infinite independently. It's important to note that infinity cannot be doubled. Sortles and counting. Now let's bring in sortles, which help us understand how to count correctly. A sortle tells you what kind of thing something is and how to count it. Examples: 3 dogs counts individual dogs, not dogness. 3 humans counts individual humans, not the property humanness. So when counting God, we must ask, what is the thing we are counting? The answer is the divine being itself, the one actual instance of divinity. The divine essence, what makes God God, is a property of that being, not a separate being. Applying this to the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are 3 distinct persons. But here's the key. They all fully share the same divine essence. Their divinity is not because they are separate gods, but because they participate in the one divine being. So if someone tries to count the Father, Son, and Spirit as 3 gods, what they are actually doing is counting the divine property, essence/divinity, 3 times. Saying 1 divinity, 2 divinities, 3 divinities, which is illogical because properties cannot be counted like individual things. Let's look at this analogy. Imagine you have 3 apples, all of which are red. The property they share is redness. If you try to count how many reds there are by counting each apple as a separate red, you'd say 1 red, 2 reds, 3 reds. But that's not actually counting things. You're counting a property. The number of things should be based on apples, not on the color they share. This is also the same way you can't count the Father, Son, and Spirit as 3 gods, because what makes them God is the fact that they all fully possess the property of divinity, which stems from the fact that they fully share the one divine being. So, the 3 persons are divine because they possess the property of divinity. Hence, counting them as 3 gods is the same as counting properties, because the property of divinity, which comes from the divine being, is what makes them God. Let's recap by looking at the logical chain of reasoning. 1. What makes something God? The divine essence is what makes something God. 2. What defines the divine essence? Being all-powerful, eternal, all-knowing, perfect is what defines the divine essence. 3. Can the divine essence give rise to multiple independent beings? No, because all powerfulness cannot be shared among separate beings without contradiction. 4. What is the correct sortal for counting God? The being, not the property of divinity. 5. What about the Trinity? The Father, Son, and Spirit are distinct persons but share the same divine being. 6. What happens if you count the persons as separate gods? You are counting a property, divinity, multiple times, which is illogical. 7. What about the persons? Can you count them? Yes, the persons can be counted because they are distinct by their relation of origin, but the key takeaway is that they'll simply be counted as three persons who possesses the property of divinity because they get that property from the fact they fully share the one divine being. Hence, these persons can be referred to as divine persons because they have divine properties. Takeaway for deep understanding. God is one because the divine essence can only instantiate one being. Distinctions of persons do not multiply God. They only show relational expressions of the one divine being. Counting the persons as separate gods would be a logical error because you'd be counting a shared property instead of a thing. Conclusion: there is one divine being, one God. The Trinity expresses relational distinctions within that one being, but it does not create multiple gods.